calm, be cool, act natural. It's not a race. Okay, it's a race. One accidental blip of the throttle and we couldn't stand the nerves anymore. Always be courteous to your first responders and coordinators. They may see you when you've crashed and peed your pants later. This is the 2015 Applegate Rough Riders Poker Run held in the Upper Nestucca OHV. Right now you're on board with Dave on his Husqvarna WR300. I believe it's a 2013. Dave and I decided that I should set the pace to start with. That's me out front on my 98 KX250. This is my first ever poker run, and it happens to be in the middle of a very dry fire season. The forest was completely closed up to the weekend coming up to this. We had finally gotten a mist or a light sprinkling of rain, and that was enough to lower the fire season just enough to get away with this ride and this weekend. If you've never done a poker run before, it is an organized event, but it's not a race. We couldn't shake the race pace mentality. We didn't set out going as fast as possible, but we did set out going as fast as we thought we could do 2 giant laps of this. We didn't get a clear number on how big the circuit was going to be, but we knew it'd be 2 laps. And we're not sure if it was 20 miles or 40 miles or what they had for a circuit, but it was a long ways. At the riders meeting, the race coordinator said make safe passes, don't cause anybody to crash because it's not a race. Whenever someone would go around us or we would go around someone else, I kept saying to myself, it's not a pass because it's not a race. I had to keep saying it because I didn't believe it. So the race staged in East Line Quarry and moved generally south. That was fine with us because we ride these trails all the time. We know them pretty well, so it was fun to get to push the pace and see if we were even competitive. Honestly, we got passed by a lot of people that surprised me. I thought we were faster than that. Most of the people who passed us were the race coordinators themselves doing cleanup runs. They'd run the trails to make sure nobody was down or hurt. We got passed by them quite a few times, and we'd even get by them when they'd pull over at the end of the trail or something. So I was out front and I kind of missed what happened here, but he did get cross-rutted. I don't know if his front tire fell off the right-hand side or he tried to change ruts or what happened. One way or another, that big 300 went full sideways there for a second.
I cross-rutted and tipped her over is all. Alright? Yeah, I'm good.
Now coming up is a pair of race coordinators. They were riding the track, and that white bike there, the TC250, that drew a lot of lonely stares in the pits before we took off and made a lot of other riders' bikes jealous. This is the first checkpoint, and it's quite a ways out there. It seemed like it was a long time before we finally got to a checkpoint, but it cracked me up. I really felt like I should be sitting back letting somebody pour gas in the tank, giving me water and sandwiches and all sorts of stuff. Well, this brings us to the hard bit. This is the beginning of Bible Creek, starting up from the highway as you just saw. I hadn't been up this series of trails in quite some time, and this was probably the funnest part of the whole ride for me, at least because I know the trails a little bit, so I know what to expect. Everything else back towards the northern end was kind of like learning something new, and I was a little bit on edge because I didn't know the trails. Well, there went that pesky TC250 in what was definitely not a pass. He's about to lead me up the second funnest climb of the day, and I love this trail. It's a lot of fun. I don't know that I would have had the nerve to go up and on my own, but with the poker run, I mean, you can't say no. These 2 stumps make a pretty neat trail feature. The roots come together like a pair of scissors. Now Dave has only been riding a little over a year, and he was a lot of angry throttle at first, and that was getting him through some situations, but I think he's found a little more finesse and technical skill set that can help him out. He makes a decent riding buddy when you can get him motivated. He's got a really physical job that keeps him busy through the week, and while that keeps him in shape, it also doesn't leave him much energy on the weekends for much more than fishing. Not a pass. Dave and I got a kick out of this guy. We wound up passing him twice throughout the day, and both times he'd move over to let one of us by and didn't see the other one coming, so we kind of felt like jerks, but that's the way it went. We didn't hit him. These two characters parked right next to us in the staging area, and it was pretty odd that they did, since we wound up seeing the most of them on the trail out there. Our speed was almost directly matched. If their group stopped for water or we stopped for water, one of us wound up passing the other, and it was just neck and neck all day long. We went back and forth several times. They were really cool guys also. It turned out one of them lent me a pair of gloves for the day because I'd forgot mine at home. And another example of this not being a race, there's a little fella spun out on the hill here, and we would have blown by him if it were a race. You know, there was plenty of room, but we might have got out of control and spun on the rocks and took his front tire out and just ruined his day, so it was a safer, smarter bet to wait for him. Here they go again. They caught us up on top of Bible Creek while we were rolling along conserving energy. So I tried to take the right-hand track here, and my front tire never lifted over that root, and it just guided the front tire straight into that tree, and I center punched it. It picked the rear tire clear up off the ground, but Dave was too far back to actually pick up the crash. This guy obviously didn't attend the riders meeting because he didn't know it wasn't a race. As I mentioned, this is a hot day in the middle of fire season, and you would think it would be miserable riding conditions, but it really wasn't that bad. Being in the coast range like the Upper Nestucca is, it's a lot cooler. You get the coastal breeze on occasion, and we were in plenty of shade anyway, so riding conditions were really pretty good. Now this is a little shortcut they punched in to go from the road onto the trail over here, and I really doubt it's open year round. They're probably going to block it back off, but it really gave me fits. There was a couple of low spots, and I get my tires on the high and couldn't get my feet down, and I was really having trouble. Dave didn't mind, as you can see by the wheelie turn. Shortcuts like this sort of had me lost all day. I was getting on trails and not really recognizing where I was, and then realizing when I get to the end of them or recognize a spot that they were some of my favorite trails. With our not a race pace, we would throttle it up a little bit and clip right along for a while and then back it off and take a break here and there, but with these newly broken trails, they were just dug with a skid steer, I think, not too long ago, earlier this spring, and they were really dusty, so we definitely backed it off a bit. We were behind our friends from the parking lot through this section, so it was a little dusty, and we definitely backed it off a bit until we got around them. This little tight downhill section they cut out was pretty fun, but it dropped me out on one of my favorite trails in the whole OHV, and I was absolutely lost. I didn't recognize it one bit. You may have noticed that Dave has a recluse clutch in this Husqvarna. He also has moose tire inserts, and that's about it for the modifications. I've never made fun of a person for not getting flat tires, so the moose are pretty cool, but we're definitely going to take that recluse out of there. Dave really enjoys the feel of his 99 Suzuki RM when he gets to use the clutch and all. You can always take pride when you conquer obstacles with the manual clutch. Here I went down like an absolute power donkey. It was about 45 minutes into the run and I was starting to fade a little bit, but I let my front tire wander just a little too high on the berm and it pushed right through the soft stuff and down I went. Dave's going to go ahead and show you how a proper rider would navigate such a corner. They still didn't have any gas or sandwiches for us at the checkpoints, but we did manage to get by our parking lot buddies again. Now I'm still feeling like a goober from my get off earlier, and I did manage to pinch a nerve in my back again. But I knew there was no way Dave was going to take the bypass around this log because he's crossed it before, and I figured if he's going to do it, I'm going to do it. I got hung up and had to lift, and of course Dave makes it in one shot. That snag we just crossed blew down this last winter, and it's at the top of a one-way downhill only hill climb. And I'd be lying if I said I never climbed it, but it's because they sign it poorly and the bottom of this trail doesn't say do not enter. It does specify one way, but it doesn't say which direction is the one way. I think this climb is far more intimidating going downhill than it is going uphill. Uphill in the wet was one thing, downhill in the dry is another. Your tires are not planted, it's really loose, and trying to slow down could result in speeding up. So we stopped for a water break about halfway and switched the camera. We didn't know we were halfway because we'd never seen the course. It was a complete mystery to us, but wound up being just about the halfway mark on the button. So I'm riding as close as I possibly can to Dave. I'm trying to stay in his roost, in his dust, in his smoke, everything. I think it makes for better video that way. Plus, it lets him know the entire time that I'm right there with him and he can push the pace. And he'll probably hear if I go down or have a problem, and I'll definitely see if he does. So we're well outside of our known territory in the Upper Nestucca, but that didn't stop Dave from throwing rocks at me. I guess he didn't mind if I went down or had a problem because of it. Well, here's that character again. He got by us when we had a water break, and we go by him, there goes Dave, and then he starts to crowd back over, and here I come too. We're starting to get back into our territory now. This is heading down towards Elk Flat staging area.
A Rokon? Can I trade?
They had a Rokon at the checkpoint and agreed that I could trade, but still no gas or sandwiches.
Two-wheel drive.
Well, it was just a hop and a skip back to Eastline Quarry on trails we know all too well, but that didn't stop me from getting the corner of my head pipe hung up on the end of that log. If I'd have been riding a four-stroke, that would not have happened. I got clear and tried to catch up with Dave, and then that rock ripped my foot off the foot peg. I just wasn't having a good day. We knew by our proximity to the Eastline Quarry that they couldn't have thrown too much more at us, and we had a pretty good idea of all the trails in between, but one of our favorite hill climbs is coming up in a second, and we just love it because it keeps you guessing. There doesn't matter how precise you hit it, it's hard to hit the same line even in the dry. So Dave felt the footage was probably pretty boring and decided we needed another crash.
You alright?
It was obvious we were getting whooped, and the likelihood of a second lap was seeming pretty low as we pulled back into the pits. The fire danger had fallen low enough to allow the race to happen, but the woods were still on a 1 o'clock shutdown, so it meant the course had to be cleared by 1 o'clock. There were some great prizes on the line, so we went ahead and drew our cards. This is why I don't need a kickstand.
And what number were you? 20. Where's the one on the bottom? That's the one you were hiding from me. I get 7, right?
Those cards were crap, so I lit their table on fire and beat a hasty retreat. No sandwiches.